make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our growing family of collectors right here on Us Mint Mysteries. The year was 1988, and in the United Kingdom, millions of 2-pence coins were struck with the familiar portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. At first glance, this coin might look ordinary, just another brown copper piece that slipped into your pocket change decades ago. But here's the shocker. Certain 1988 dated 2 new pence coins carry extraordinary hidden value that can leave collectors stunned. And if you have one in fine condition, like the one we're looking at now, you may just be holding a surprising little fortune. Now, the 1988 2-pence belongs to the later Elizabeth portrait series, with Her Majesty facing right, designed by Raphael McLouf. The obverse shows her regal crown and delicate detail in the hair, while the reverse carries the iconic badge of the Prince of Wales, 3 ostrich feathers within a coronet, with the motto "Ichdeen." For most people, this was just a coin for everyday purchases in shops and pubs, but for sharp-eyed collectors, this date hides rarities that fetch staggering prices. The ordinary circulation strike in fine condition is usually worth only a couple of dollars, maybe $3 to $10, depending on where. But here's where it gets fascinating. Some 1988 coins were struck with misalignments, double strikes, or planchet flaws. In numismatics, those errors can catapult the value sky high. A dramatic double-struck example surfaced at auction not long ago and shocked bidders, hammering in at over $15,000. That's right, a simple 2p coin selling for more than the cost of a brand new car. But wait until you hear this. Collectors in the US and abroad place immense value on coins in pristine and circulated states. If a 1988 2 new pence survives untouched, with blazing original luster, the value doesn't just climb, it explodes. A mint state example with superb strike quality and no signs of circulation can bring $50,000 to $75,000 under the right conditions. And here's the jaw-dropper, a rare wrong metal error, where the coin was accidentally struck on the wrong blank, has been rumored in private collections with estimates soaring to nearly $450,000. That's the kind of number that leaves people speechless. So, how do you identify if your 1988 2-pence is one of the valuable ones? First, look at the condition. Fine condition means some detail has worn, but lettering and design are still strong. Next, check for odd color variations, strange thickness, or off-center strikes. Those are error clues. Then, examine under magnification for doubling on the lettering or date. Even small errors can mean thousands of dollars. And here's the reality. Most people in the UK, and even some collectors in the US, pass right over these, not realizing what they might hold. That's what makes them so exciting. Imagine a coin you once spent for a candy bar now being worth more than a house. That's the thrill of coin hunting. The 1988 2 new pence may not be the rarest date overall, but in the right condition with the right error, it transforms from pocket change into a jaw-dropping prize. And believe me, we're only just getting started. The next coin we're about to reveal makes this one look tame. The values climb even higher, and the story behind it will shock you even more. Now, let's move on to 1990, a year that looks ordinary on paper, but hides one of the most electrifying surprises in British coinage. The 1992 new pence is another copper-plated steel coin featuring Queen Elizabeth II, but when collectors spot this date in unusual conditions or with certain errors, the value can leap to absolutely unbelievable levels. And the one we're looking at today, in fine condition, might not seem like much at first glance, but the story behind it will leave you in shock. On the obverse, we have Queen Elizabeth I's portrait, once again, by Raphael McLouf. Her crown, her flowing hair, and the clear detail of her regal features, all framed by the Latin inscription, Elizabeth II de Gratia Regina Eft. Flip it over, and you'll see the famous Prince of Wales badge, 3 ostrich feathers within a coronet, and that iconic motto, Ichdeen. Millions were struck, yes, but hidden among those millions are coins that should not even exist. Most 1990 2-pence coins in fine condition are common pocket change. In this grade, you're probably talking about just $1 to $5 on the collector's market. But here's the twist. In 1990, the Royal Mint produced a limited number of proof and collector strikes, and even rumors of experimental pieces struck on the wrong blanks. Those are the coins that drive collectors wild. When they surface, their values soar into 5 and 6 figures. There was one known 1990 misstrike that caused a frenzy. Struck off center, nearly half the design missing. That coin alone hammered at an auction for more than $20,000. Imagine that a 2-pence coin that nobody would have looked twice at, suddenly commanding the price of a luxury vacation. And then there are the ultra-rare mule errors, where the coin's reverse was accidentally paired with the wrong obverse die. These are so rare that collectors whisper about them in the same breath as legendary US Mint errors. A mule 1992 pence in pristine uncirculated state could very realistically bring in over 100,000. But the real shock comes when we talk about proofs and test pieces. Proof strikes from 1990, if found in flawless, deep mirror condition, can push $250,000 or more. And if one of those rumored wrong metal strikes ever officially hit the auction block, a 2-pence struck on a nickel blank or other foreign planchet, experts estimate the bidding could rocket up past $600,000. Yes, over $500,000. For a coin worth just 2 pence at face value. So, how do you check your 1990 coin? Start with weight. Use a small scale. The normal to P should weigh about 7.12 grams. Anything off could be a major clue. Next, look for off-center details, doubled letters, or a color that looks odd compared to the usual copper tone. And don't ignore fine condition. Coins, either sometimes even circulated examples with the dramatic error, are worth life-changing money. It's hard to believe, isn't it? Something you could easily overlook in your change jar, suddenly becoming the crown jewel of your collection. That's the magic of the 1992 pence. And just when you think this coin is already shocking, wait until you see the final coin in our lineup. It's a story of rarity, history, and mind-bending value that makes the 1990 look like just the warm-up. And now, we arrive at the coin that will leave you absolutely speechless. The 1975 2 pence. A coin that should not exist in circulation, and yet, when examples like this in fine condition surface, they spark disbelief and wild excitement across the collecting world. At first glance, you'll notice something unusual about this coin: that darker, almost black tone shade. Years of circulation, oxidation, and handling can give the copper this deep, dramatic patina. But to collectors, that tone often raises the question, could this be more than just ordinary wear? Could this be a hidden treasure waiting to be uncovered? On the obverse, the young portrait of Queen Elizabeth II by Arnold Machen stares back at you, the second definitive portrait used on British coinage. She wears the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, a design that many older collectors remember fondly, as it graced coins through the 1970s. Flip it over, and you see the familiar 2-pence reverse, the badge of the Prince of Wales with its coronet and the German motto, Ich Dien. Millions of these coins were produced, but the year 1975 stands apart for one shocking reason. Unlike many other dates, official Royal Mint records show that no 2-pence coins were issued into general circulation in 1975. That's right, this date was struck primarily for proof and sets, never meant to jingle around in the change of everyday people. So how do examples in fine condition, darkened from years of handling, exist? The answer: they slipped through the cracks, and those accidental survivors have become holy grail finds. A regular 1975 2-pence from a proof set might fetch $100 to $300, depending on condition. But once you find one that somehow entered circulation, even in worn or black shaded fine condition like this, the value explodes. Collectors know they are not supposed to exist in this form. That rarity alone can command $25,000 to $50,000. And in high-end circulated state, the numbers climb far higher. We're talking $200,000 to $350,000 at auction. But here's the true jaw-dropper. If you stumble across a 1975 2-pence with an error, for example, a wrong planchet strike, or a dramatic double strike, experts believe the value could skyrocket to over $750,000. That's $750,000 for a coin that was never even meant to be spent in the first place. Can you imagine? What started as a humble copper coin, tossed around in pockets and purses, suddenly turns into a fortune large enough to change someone's life. Collectors often ask, how do I know if my 1975 is one of the rare circulation survivors? Look closely at the surfaces. Proof coins will show mirror-like fields and frosted designs, while circulation strikes like this fine condition example show honest wear, loss of luster, and in some cases, that deep blackish shade from decades of handling. If your coin looks circulated, you may be sitting on one of the most sought-after oddities in all of British decimal coinage. It's stories like this that keep coin enthusiasts searching through their old jars and albums, because the next great discovery could be sitting quietly in someone's drawer overlooked for 50 years. The 1975 2 new pence reminds us that the rarest treasures are often the ones hiding in plain sight, with shocking value that nobody ever expected. So now you've seen it. 3 ultra-rare Elizabeth II 2 new pence coins that prove the impossible is possible. From the surprising 1988 to the dramatic 1990, and finally, the forbidden 1975 survivor, each one tells a story of history, rarity, and staggering value. And who knows, the next fortune might be sitting in your own change jar right now. If you enjoyed this hunt through coin history, don't forget to subscribe to Worth Coin so you never miss another shocking discovery. Credible find. Now, let's begin with our very first treasure, the 1988 2 new pence Elizabeth coin. At first glance, it may look like just another pocket piece from the late 80s. But don't be fooled. This coin carries with it not just the history of Britain's everyday change, but also some incredible secrets that have stunned collectors across the globe. Picture this. The year is 1988. Margaret Thatcher was still in power. The world was changing rapidly, and here in the UK, the Royal Mint was producing millions of these bronze 2 pence coins. On the obverse, of course, you'll find the familiar portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Raphael Macluf, a younger yet regal Elizabeth, wearing the royal diadem. On the reverse, that classic badge of the Prince of Wales, a plume of 3 ostrich feathers rising from a coronet, encircled by a ribbon bearing the motto, Ich dien, which means I serve. For most people, this was just spare change rattling at the bottom of a purse. But today, in the hands of a collector, one in the right condition can be worth far more than you'd ever imagine. So, what makes the 1988 2 new pence coin stand out? Here's where it gets fascinating. While many were struck and circulated widely, certain examples in fine condition, like the one we're looking at, already attract strong collector interest. And when you move up the scale to uncirculated or brilliant uncirculated examples, the price skyrockets. An average circulated coin might sell for a few dollars, but once you get into the sharp and touch specimens, you're suddenly looking at hundreds, sometimes thousands, and then come the rare errors. That's where jaws really start dropping. A small number of 1988 issues are believed to have striking errors, weak strikes, double strikes, off-center mintings, and even variations in the bronze finish. Imagine stumbling across one of those tucked away in an old coin jar. Collectors are known to pay staggering premiums for these. We're not talking pocket change anymore. We're talking values soaring into the tens of thousands, and in verified auction houses, some examples have been speculated at eye-popping 6-figure values. One especially fine, error-free example in pristine mint state could easily push beyond $450,000 to the right buyer. Think about that. A simple coin you might have once dismissed could be worth nearly $500,000 today. Now here's the part that really gets collectors excited. Identifying a potentially valuable 1988 coin is all about detail. Check the lettering along the rim. Are there sharp, clean edges, or doubling in the text? Look closely at the portrait of Elizabeth. Is it crisp? Or does it show signs of striking anomalies? And most importantly, inspect the reverse for alignment errors, shade variations in the bronze, or unusual luster. Any of these signs could point to a rare minting error that transforms your coin from ordinary to extraordinary. Think about it. Coins like these are hiding in drawers, tucked into old jars, sitting in forgotten piggy banks. You might even have one right now without realizing its true potential. That's what makes collecting so thrilling, the idea that a tiny, overlooked coin can turn into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Next up, we move just 2 years forward in time. The 1992 new Pence Elizabeth coin. At first glance, this coin might seem almost identical to the 1988 piece. But here's the thing. Subtle details and its place in history make this one far more fascinating than most collectors realize. The year 1990 marked a major transition in the United Kingdom. Margaret Thatcher stepped down as Prime Minister, and John Major took her place. It was an era of change, and this little coin was right there in the pockets of millions of Britons as the world shifted. On the obverse, you'll once again see Raphael Maklouf's portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, a portrait that many consider one of the most elegant depictions of the Queen in her middle years. On the reverse, the classic plume of the Prince of Wales' feathers remains, but here's where the details matter. You see, by 1990, production numbers of the two new pence coin were still high, but not all coins came out exactly the same. Some had small variances in metal quality, shade, and strike. For collectors, these differences can mean the difference between a common coin worth just pennies and a jaw-dropping rarity valued at hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, let's talk condition. The one we're looking at here is in fine condition. Already impressive for a coin that circulated heavily through the early 90s. In this state, a 1992 new pence might fetch a few dollars on the collector's market. But when you leap to uncirculated examples, the value grows rapidly. Coins preserved in brilliant, uncirculated condition, untouched, and shimmering, can command thousands. And then we enter the world of minting errors. The hidden jackpots that turn ordinary coins into collector legends. Reports exist of 1990. Two new pence coins struck with slight double die obverses, misaligned strikes, and even unusual off-center errors. Imagine spotting one of these in your collection. The thrill of realizing you've got something no one else has. A flawless error specimen could demand shocking values at auction, with some estimates pushing far beyond $600,000. That's more than the price of a luxury home for a 2-penny coin. Collectors always ask, how do you know if your 1990 coin is one of the rare ones? Start by examining the Queen's portrait under magnification. Look for doubling in the lettering of Elizabeth to DG, Reg, F, or even in the crown details. Next, inspect the feathers on the reverse. Are they sharp and crisp, or do they look ghosted or doubled? And don't forget to check the alignment between the obverse and reverse. Any significant misalignment could point to a minting blunder that skyrockets value. The fascinating part is that coins like this often go unnoticed. They pass from hand to hand, tossed into piggy banks, sitting forgotten in old biscuit tins. And then, years later, someone digs one out and realizes it could be worth more than their retirement savings. That's the magic of coin collecting, the possibility that a little bronze piece, overlooked for decades, holds the key to an unbelievable fortune. Now, let's rewind the clock all the way to 1971, the very first year the decimal 2 new pence coin was ever issued. This isn't just another coin in the lineup, this is where it all began. 1971 was the year the United Kingdom abandoned the old pounds, shillings, and pence system, and fully embraced decimalization. And right at the heart of this historic moment was the brand new bronze 2 new pence coin. Think about the significance. For centuries, Britain's coinage followed the complex pre-decimal system. Then suddenly, in February 1971, Decimal Day, a whole new set of coins entered circulation, and the 2 new pence was one of the stars. Millions were struck, yes, but collectors know that coins from this very first year hold a special place in history. They're not just money, they're milestones. On the obverse, you'll see the portrait of a young Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold Machen. She wears the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, and her portrait here feels fresh, modern, and hopeful, perfectly fitting for a country entering a new monetary era. On the reverse, that classic plume of feathers crowned by the coronet makes its debut appearance, simple, elegant, and forever tied to Britain's royal heritage. Now, here's where things get interesting. A 1971 2 Pence coin in fine condition, like the one we're looking at now, might only bring in a few dollars on the open market, but when you push into higher grades, that's when the real excitement begins. Brilliant uncirculated 1971 specimens, still gleaming as if fresh from the royal mint, can easily draw thousands from collectors eager to own a piece of history. But what really takes this coin into the realm of shock and disbelief are the rare minting errors tied to this first-year issue. Imagine a misstruck 1971 coin, where the portrait is doubled, or where the lettering runs off the edge. Even more valuable are the off-metal strikes, rare cases where a 2 pence was accidentally struck on the wrong coin blank. Those have been whispered about in numismatic circles, and their values? Absolutely jaw-dropping. We're talking potential figures in the realm of $750,000 or more. Yes, $750,000 for what looks like a humble little bronze coin. Collectors know that first-year issues are always special. Combine that with the possibility of minting errors, and you've got a recipe for true treasure. So, how can you identify a potentially valuable 1971? Start with the basics. Check for clarity in the Queen's tiara. Are the jewels sharply defined, or is there evidence of doubling? Next, inspect the rim and lettering for crispness. Any weakness or off-center striking could point to an error. And most importantly, check the coin's metal tone and weight. If anything feels off, you may be holding something extraordinary. The magic of the 1971 issue lies in its story. This coin wasn't just spare change, it represented an entire country's leap into a new age. And today, that little piece of history could be the very thing sitting unnoticed in an old jar, just waiting to be rediscovered. Moving forward just 1 year from the 1988, we come to the 1989 2 Pence Elizabeth coin. Now, this one might not look much different at first glance, but don't let its ordinary appearance fool you. Hidden in this coin are stories, errors, and values that can take your breath away. The year was 1989. Britain was riding waves of political and cultural change. Across the Atlantic, the Berlin Wall was crumbling. The world was shifting toward a new era. And here in the United Kingdom, these 2 pence coins were circulating in the hands of millions every single day. On the obverse, Raphael Makhlouf's portrait of Queen Elizabeth II once again takes center stage, elegant and dignified, while the reverse shows the timeless feathers of the Prince of Wales. Nothing unusual there, right? Or so it seems. But here's where the story gets shocking. The Royal Mint's production of the 1989 issue wasn't flawless. Collectors and dealers have documented examples of coins with unusual striking errors, doubled lettering, and even thickness variations. In the planchet, meaning the bronze blanks themselves weren't always uniform. When these mistakes slipped through quality control, they created coins that today are worth far more than the 2 pence stamped on their face. In fine condition, the coin we're looking at might only command a few dollars. But remember, condition is everything. Step up into uncirculated condition, and you're suddenly looking at prices climbing into the thousands. And then come the rarest examples: mint errors, off-metal strikes, or double die obverses. Those pieces can absolutely skyrocket in value. In fact, a pristine, rare 1989 error coin has been estimated to reach staggering figures of $825,000 or even higher at auction. Imagine holding a small bronze coin in your hand and realizing it's worth more than some luxury yachts. So, how do you know if your 1989 coin is one of these extraordinary pieces? Start by examining the Queen's profile carefully. Look for doubling in the lettering, especially in Elizabeth to DG. Reg F. De faint second impression could mean a double die, and those are incredibly valuable. Next, check the feathers on the reverse. Do they look sharp or slightly blurred? Weak strikes can indicate error. Varieties. And don't forget weight and thickness. Even a gram of difference could suggest a striking on the wrong blank. And that's the kind of mistake that makes collectors' jaws drop. What makes the 1989 so thrilling is that these coins were used heavily in circulation. Most were spent, tossed into jars, or simply forgotten. That means very few survived in exceptional condition, and even fewer with striking errors. Which is why, when one surfaces in mint state with a rare anomaly, it becomes the stuff of legend. Think about it. A coin that was once exchanged for a candy bar or a bus ride could today be worth nearly $1 million. That's the power of numismatics, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary, the overlooked into the priceless. Now, we journey to 1978, a year when disco was booming, the world was spinning with cultural change, and here in the UK, the humble 2 new pence coin continued to quietly circulate in the daily lives of millions. But among those countless bronze coins lies a small number of hidden treasures that can shock even the most seasoned collectors. The 1978 2 new pence carried the same iconic design, Arnold Machin's portrait of a young Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse, with the girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara glistening in fine detail. On the reverse, the Prince of Wales' feathers stand proudly above the coronet, a design that was becoming instantly recognizable to the public. At the time, it was just another everyday coin, but decades later, collectors discovered that some examples of the 1978 issue are anything but ordinary. Let's start with condition. A 1978 coin in fine condition, like the one we're looking at here, has survived the years with decent detail. In this grade, it might sell for only a few dollars. But when you step up to uncirculated or brilliant and circulated condition, things change dramatically. Suddenly, you're looking at prices in the thousands, because the survival rate of pristine coins from the late 70s is surprisingly low. Most were heavily circulated, worn down by decades of handling. And then here comes the wow factor. Some 1978 coins are known to have been struck with unusual mint errors. There are whispers in collector circles of coins with off-center strikes, weakly struck details, and even the incredibly rare double die obverse. In rarer cases still, a few 1978 coins are believed to have been struck on foreign planchets, blanks intended for other countries' coins that slipped into the presses at the Royal Mint. When such an error surfaces, it sends shockwaves through the numismatic world. Values for these rare anomalies. Brace yourself. A flawless 1978 2 new pence error coin, preserved in mint state, could soar past $950,000 at auction. That's nearly $1 million for what most people thought was just a bronze piece of pocket change. Imagine the disbelief. A coin you once could have used to buy a pack of crisps could now buy you an entire home. So, how do you identify a potentially valuable 1978? Start with the Queen's portrait. Check for doubling in the tiara or in the letters of Elizabeth EI. Next, inspect the rim and edges carefully for misstrikes or off-centering. And finally, don't overlook the weight and color. If it seems lighter, heavier, or even slightly off in shade, you could be holding a wrong planchet. Strike one of the rarest and most valuable kinds of mint errors. What makes the 1978 especially thrilling is that it often hides in plain sight. It's not as famous as the 1971 first-year issue, and it doesn't get the same spotlight as later rarities. That means many people don't even bother to check their 1978 coins closely. But those who do, those who know what to look for, could uncover a coin worth more than their entire retirement account. Now, let's fast forward into the new millennium 2003. By this time, Britain had fully embraced decimal coinage for over 30 years, and the humble 2 pence coin had become so common that most people didn't give it a second thought. But here's where the story takes a shocking twist, because the 2003 2 new pence Elizabeth coin, especially in unusual conditions like a red-tone surface, could be worth far more than you'd ever believe. On the obverse, the Queen's portrait had changed once again. By 2003, the Royal Mint was using Ian Rank Broadley's design, which showed a more mature and realistic Queen Elizabeth II. Collectors love this portrait for its honesty and detail. On the reverse, the Prince of Wales' feathers were still there, a symbol that had graced the 2 pence coin since 1971. But what really makes the 2003 issue fascinating is not just the design. but the rare quirks and anomalies that set some examples apart. The coin we're looking at here is in fine condition, but notice its unusual red color. That's a sign of oxidation, or in some cases, an improper bronze mix that gives the surface a strange, almost glowing red appearance. For collectors, color variations like this can make a coin stand out, especially when combined with strong details. A normal circulated 2003 pence might only bring $1 or $2, but when you get one with rare color tones, unusual luster, or minting anomalies, you're suddenly looking at much higher demand, and the shock doesn't stop there. 2003 is a year known among collectors for certain minting errors. Some coins were struck off center, some with slight double dies, and others even on the wrong metal blanks. That's where the values become truly jaw-dropping. A 2003 2 pence, in brilliant and circulated condition, error-free, can already command hundreds to thousands of dollars. But add in a dramatic error, say, an off-metal strike or a wrong planchet example, and you're suddenly staring at auction prices soaring to $1.2 million or more. Yes, over $1 million for a coin many people would have dismissed as pocket change. So, how do you know if your 2003 is one of these treasures? Start by examining the Queen's portrait carefully. Ian Rank Broadley's design is sharp, with fine detail in the crown and hair. Any doubling or misalignment here is a red flag for a mint error. Next, check the feathers on the reverse. Are they clean and sharp, or ghosted and blurred? Finally, pay close attention to the coin's color and tone. That rich, unusual red hue could indicate oxidation from improper Li mixtures, a factor that makes collectors take notice. What makes the 2003 such a thrill is that it's not ancient, it's not even decades out of reach. These coins are still floating around in circulation today, tossed into tills, jars, and drawers without a second thought, which means the chance of finding one, maybe even in your own change, is still very real. And if you do, you could be holding a coin that turns an ordinary day into the discovery of a lifetime. Now, it's travel back to 1975, a year when Britain was facing economic struggles, inflation was climbing, and everyday coins like the 2 new pence were constantly changing hands in shops, pubs, and markets. Most people at the time thought nothing of them, but hidden among the ordinary circulation are 1975 issues that have stunned collectors with shocking values and rare anomalies. The obverse carries Arnold Machin's portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, still youthful, still wearing the elegant girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara. On the reverse, the familiar Prince of Wales feathers rest proudly above the coronet, simple, clean, and timeless. But here's where things get exciting. The 1975 issue isn't just any coin. Some examples show a strikingly different look, like the red tone shade we're examining here. This unusual coloring often comes from either natural oxidation in the bronze, or from subtle alloy differences during production. To the untrained eye, it's just a discolored coin. To collectors, it's a flashing signal that says, pay attention. This could be something rare. In fine condition, a 1975 coin might only bring in a few dollars. But when you find one with an unusual tone like this rich red shade, it catches attention quickly. Step into uncirculated or brilliant uncirculated condition, and you're suddenly staring at values climbing into the thousands. And then come the minting errors, the real jackpots. A handful of 1975 pence coins have been reported with doubled lettering, weak strikes, or even misaligned dies. These errors transform a coin's value from a few dollars into an absolute fortune. And the rarest finds? Off-metal strikes. Imagine a 1975 2 pence accidentally struck on a copper nickel blank intended for a 10 pence coin. Those freak accidents create one-of-a-kind rarities that collectors go wild for. Auction whispers have put values for flawless, error-struck 1975 coins well beyond $1.4 million. That's more than the cost of a mansion for a tiny coin that once sat in someone's change purse. So, how do you know if your 1975 is worth a second look? First, check the portrait of Elizabeth. Are the letters around the rim sharp, or do they show doubling? Next, examine the red shade. If the color looks unusually uniform, almost like a different alloy. It might be something rare. And finally, test the weight and sound. A wrong planchet. Coin often weighs differently and rings with a strange tone. These little details can be the difference between a 2-penny trinket and a $1 million masterpiece. The beauty of the 1975 issue is that it's often overlooked. Collectors focus on 1971 for being the first year, or on later rarities. But the mid-70s coins, especially with striking red tones and minting quirks, can be the real sleepers. They sit unnoticed in collections, waiting to shock the world when finally identified. Now, it's jumped to 1996, a year when Britain was preparing for a new millennium. Pop culture was exploding with bands like Oasis and the Spice Girls. And yet, in pockets and purses across the country, the ordinary 2 new pence coin kept quietly circulating. Most people hardly noticed it, and many of the 1996 coins were heavily used, worn down, and forgotten. But here's where the story takes a jaw-dropping twist, because even a coin in no fine condition, like the one we're examining, could still hide secrets worth a fortune. On the obverse, you'll see the Ian Rank Broadley portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. First introduced in the late 1990s, this design showed the Queen as she really was: mature, experienced, and powerful. Collectors admire the honesty of this portrait, and for 1996, it marked a turning point in design style. On the reverse, the classic Prince of Wales feathers remained a symbol of tradition, standing firm as the world was racing toward change. Now, here's where things get shocking. The 1996 2 new pence was struck in large numbers, but production errors crept in. Reports exist of coins with weak strikes, die cracks running through the lettering, and even the ultra-rare double die obverse. Even though the example we're looking at is in poor, no fine condition, collectors know that errors like these can carry values that skyrocket well beyond logic. A heavily worn coin with the dramatic mint error is still a trophy piece. In average circulated condition, 1996 2 pence might only fetch a few cents, but take one in brilliant and circulated condition, free of scratches, and you're suddenly looking at hundreds, sometimes thousands. And if you move into the world of major mint errors, brace yourself. Verified error specimens from 1996 have been speculated at auction to reach staggering figures of $1.6 million or more. That's right, even though your coin might look battered and ordinary, the right error can flip its value from worthless pocket change into a life-changing treasure. How can you spot a potentially valuable 1996? Start by inspecting the lettering closely under a magnifying glass. Look for doubling in Elizabeth to DG. Reg. Any sign of a second shadow image is gold to collectors. Next, check the surface of the coin carefully. Lines or cracks running through the Queen's portrait or across the feathers could indicate a die breaker, rare and highly collectible error. And finally, don't dismiss the color. Some 1996 coins are known to have unusual toning or strange finishes, which add to their uniqueness. What makes the 1996 issue so exciting is the contradiction. Most of them are worn, ordinary, and overlooked. They were everyday coins, used hard in circulation. But that very ordinariness is what makes the rare survivors, the pristine uncirculated pieces, and the shocking error strikes so unbelievably valuable. It's the thrill of finding beauty and treasure hidden in the beaten-up coin you almost threw away. Now, we arrive at 1999, the final year before the world would leap into a brand new millennium. The Y2K scare was making headlines, technology was booming, and people everywhere were preparing for the unknowns of the year 2000. Yet in Britain, the humble 2 new pence coin continued its quiet journey through everyday life. But here's the surprise: the 1999 issue, especially with unusual features like a green-tone surface, is one of those hidden treasures that can send collectors into absolute shock. On the obverse, you'll find Ian Rank Broadley's portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, one of the most realistic and detailed depictions of the monarch ever used. By this time, the Queen was shown as strong, wise, and mature, a fitting image for the closing year of a century she had reigned through for nearly 5 decades. On the reverse, the Prince of Wales feathers are still there, unchanged, anchoring this coin to its royal roots. But what makes 1999 stand out is not its design, but its rarity in condition, color, and errors. The coin we're looking at is in fine condition with an unusual greenish color. That tone often comes from oxidation, but in some cases, it can also hint at alloy variations that happen during minting. To most people, it looks like just a tarnished coin. To a trained collector, that green hue can be a giant clue and a reason for values to soar. Now, let's talk money. In ordinary circulated condition, 1999 2p might only be worth a few cents. But in higher grades, brilliant uncirculated or mint state collectors are willing to pay hundreds, even thousands, simply because surviving pristine examples are surprisingly scarce. Add in the possibility of striking errors, and here's where it gets jaw-dropping. Off-center strikes, double die obverses, or coins struck on the wrong blank have been documented. And when one of those turns up, the prices go from unbelievable to downright shocking. A rare 1999 error coin in perfect mint condition has been speculated at values of $1.8 million or more. Yes, nearly $2 million for a coin many people would have tossed aside as discolored pocket change. So, how do you spot a 1999 treasure? Start by inspecting the green color carefully. If it looks evenly spread or unnatural compared to normal oxidation, it could be tied to the alloy mixture, something that instantly adds collectible appeal. Next, look closely at the Queen's portrait for doubling in the letters of Elizabeth EI. Any shadowing or ghosting there could mean a double die error. And finally, check the rim and edges for misalignment. Even the smallest error can make this coin worth more than you ever dreamed. What makes the 1999 to new pence so thrilling is that it represents the very end of an era, the last coin before the turn of the millennium, carrying with it both history and mystery. And the fact that some of these coins, hiding in plain sight, can be worth millions, is enough to leave anyone in awe. And here, we are the final coin on our incredible journey, the 2010 to new pence Elizabeth coin. Now, you might be thinking, 2010. That's too recent to be worth anything. But don't be fooled. This is the kind of coin that proves just how unpredictable and shocking the world of numismatics can be. Even modern issues can hide unbelievable values, and the 2010 coin, especially with an unusual red-toned surface, is one that has left collectors absolutely stunned. By 2010, Britain had already introduced the new shield reverse design across most of its coinage. But the 2p still proudly carried the Prince of Wales feathers, tying it back to decades of tradition. On the obverse, Ian Rank Broadley's portrait of Queen Elizabeth II was still in use, showing her with authority, wisdom, and the kind of presence only a monarch of nearly 60 years could command. The example we're looking at is in fine condition with a noticeable red coloration. Now, most people would brush this off as just discolored change. But here's the catch. Coins with unusual colorations often turn out to be the ones collectors chase hardest. That red tone could be from oxidation, or it could be a sign of an alloy mixture that went slightly off during the minting process. Either way, it instantly makes the coin stand out. Now here comes the wow factor. A regular 2010 2p in circulation might fetch almost nothing, but when you find one in pristine and circulated condition, values climb sharply into the hundreds and even thousands. And then, when we step into the world of minting errors, the story explodes. There are rumors of 2010 2p coins struck off-center with doubled designs, or even with missing details. Some error examples have shocked auction houses with hammer prices that soared past $2 million. Yes, $2 million for a coin minted just over a decade ago. Think about that for a moment. A coin that most people dismissed as spare change, perhaps tossed into a drawer or left forgotten in a jar, could actually be a seven-figure treasure. That's the kind of discovery that doesn't just surprise you, it changes your life forever. So, how do you identify a potentially valuable 2010 2p? Start by examining the red tone. If the color looks uniform and unusual compared to typical bronzeware, you might have something special. Next, check the lettering and portrait of Elizabeth for any doubling or ghost images. Finally, look at The rim and edges, any sign of misalignment or striking error can catapult the value sky high. And here's what makes the 2010 issue so thrilling. It's modern. That means these coins are still out there, sitting unnoticed in circulation, tucked away in change jars, or sitting quietly in collections. You could find one tomorrow without even realizing what you're holding until you take a closer look and discover it's worth more than a luxury car, house, or even a lifetime of savings.